Welcome to the monologue with Zibuse L Kunene. Remember, it's a monologue on the video, but it's a dialogue on the comment section. So, I've been thinking about what to share with you, and there's something very important that I do want to share. Something that I've written last week, I think, some time ago, basically. Now, this is a morning thought that I shared, and I just wanted to expand on it. I titled it You Will Fall and Fail. And I'm first going to read it to you before then I just share my heart around it. And the scripture reference is Proverbs 24, verse 16. And it says that a righteous man falls 7 times and rises again. There aren't many things guaranteed in life, but death and taxes are. Even after death, you will still be taxed. These you cannot escape. Some may escape taxes, but none will escape death. It's either you spend all your life fighting the inevitable or accept it as part of life and live with it. There is, however, something else in life that is guaranteed: falling and failing. You will fall more times than you can count. You will fail more times than you can count and care to remember. God has designed life to constantly humble you and remind you of your imperfect nature. Every time you become overly confident and become too self-righteous that you become unrelatable to others, falling or failing awaits at the door. Every time you become prideful and gravitate to praising your own efforts, a big fall lurks at your doorstep. Even the agnostics and the atheists who reject a relationship with God will experience failing and falling. Even those who don't believe in the Lord God, when they grow prideful, failures and falls awaits them. The sadness about their failures and falls is that they are in vain. Count it all joy when you fall and fail, because yours is purposeful. You know you need God more than He needs you. He's not just perfect, He is beyond perfection. Perfection consults Him for its standards. Once a domesticated lion tastes blood, raw flesh, and the freedom of the wild, it can never be domesticated again. Once you have tasted a life with and in fellowship with God, you will never be the same again. Instead of fighting against falling and failing in Him, you will embrace those moments of falling and failing. Make peace with falling and failing. Make peace with being humble. Make peace with knowing that you are required to live a life of selflessness. Make peace with the knowledge that you are in a never-ending cycle of learning and growth. And as most lifelong learners will tell you, the more you learn, the more you know that there is still so much to learn. Those who are in fellowship with God and walk in the Spirit will tell you that God's revelation of His Word is perpetually unfolding. Your life has more meaning when you make peace with falling and failing. So make peace with falling and failing. You will be less judgmental and less critical of others. You will be more graceful and more forgiving of others' imperfections beyond your journey, and embrace your journey. Embrace the life that you are meant to live. So in this morning thought, the idea was that you need to embrace falling and failing as part of life, as part of your journey through life, because without it, you will grow arrogant, you will grow prideful, you will grow big-headed, because you think that, hey, I can do it all. I'm a self-made person, and there are so many people who claim to be self-made, and They are so arrogant, if I may put it that way. They are inconsiderate of other people's pain, of other people's sufferings, of other people's hardships. And they are just all about them. I can do this, I did that. And I've never failed in my life. So I don't understand, how is it that you are failing? I don't understand why you are failing. This thing is easy. If you just put your mind to it, you can do it. If you put your heart to it, you can do it. And then they go on and on and on. And then you look at them and then you think, this person is so unrelatable. I cannot relate to this person. I cannot go to this person for any advice, because to them things just come easy. To them things just happen. They have made things by themselves. So who am I to them? And so falling and failing becomes that tool that God has put in place. If you remember, the Apostle Paul even says that he was given a thorn in the flesh. And when he prayed 3 times for God to remove that thorn in the flesh, God said, no, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness, and my grace is sufficient for you. It is because of that that we need to embrace failing and falling. James says in the book of James, chapter 1, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience, but let patience have her perfect work. So there is a purpose for everything happening in your life. Nothing just seems to happen. Nothing happens for it on its own. Nothing happens randomly. Nothing happens. Things don't happen because it's a revenge. Things don't happen because there is a plot against you. No, things are unfolding as they should in your life. And because they are unfolding as they should, what you should be praying for is the understanding of what this is ushering into your life, is the understanding of what this is teaching you, and what is it pruning out of your life. Because sometimes some things happen because of a pruning process. Even though you've been productive, even though you've been a good person, and it is especially when you have been productive and when you have been a good person that the pruning takes place, because there are things that you have done that need to be taken away from you so that you are lean, so that you are able to be more productive. Because sometimes the more we become productive, we get all these medals, and the medals, they get to weigh us down, that we want to build a tent around where God has performed a miracle, and we want to build an altar and live there. But God is actually saying, I've done this. Build a memorial, but don't stay there. Move, because I have moved. That's why even in the wilderness, God had to allow the Israelites to have a tent, because a tent was temporary. A tent, they could just pitch it and then pitch it up and fold it, and then they move. And that's the life that God just wanted for them, because the wilderness was not a permanent place for them to stay, but the wilderness was a temporary stage, a temporary phase for them to move beyond where they were used to. And so, because of that, then God says to them, I don't want you to be permanent in the wilderness. There is a promised land. And because of the promised land, I want you to move. I want you to go into where I want you, where I am sending you. And so, because of that, you must move. Because of that, you must learn that failure and humility will be part of your life. If you look at Jesus, when he was walking on the earth, he was not perturbed by a permanent place to stay, because he kept moving, because he knew that there was something in his life that he needed to do. He had a mission, and that's why he kept moving. Things were not permanent. Things were temporary. He didn't have a permanent place to stay. The only thing that was permanent for him were the disciples who surrounded him. The only thing that was permanent on earth for him were the connections with people that he had. But he was not bound to the geographical location. He was not bound to certain things. He was not even bound to Judas Iscariot, because when the time came, even Jesus said to him, "Go, do what you need to do." And then he told his disciples that, "You, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times, and this will happen." And if you read how Matthew accounts for when Jesus was captured, none of the disciples were there. They ran away, even though they were there initially. Even Peter himself was there. He used the sword. But when eventually Jesus was captured, nobody was there. And so if your dependence is on people, if your dependence is on a place and a time, in a location and in the culture, then you will find it very difficult to move when God says move. And part of moving means that you have to fail. You have to fail at something. You have to fail at trying to be permanent. You have to fail at trying to always succeed, because where you always succeed, you always want to stay there. And where you are always, successful in this area, you want to entrench yourself and be the specialist. Nothing wrong with being a specialist, but you need to constantly learn and move. But part of moving and learning means that you will fail, and at times you will fall. Let's think about this. If you were never sinning, how would you look at those who sin? If you never fell into sin, if you never thought evil thoughts, if you never if you never had unrighteous thoughts, how would you look at others? How would your life be? How judgmental would you be? And so you realize that the falling says, I need God's grace. I need God's grace for this. I need God's grace, and I need to be constantly connected to God, because when I'm constantly connected to God, then I am walking with Him. And in my walk with Him, I get to grow. In my walk with Him, I get to become the best of who I can be, the best of who He has made me to be. Falling and failing are part of life. If you condemn yourself for falling, if you condemn yourself for failing, then you might as well condemn everything else about your life, because it is all working together for good. Romans 8 tells us, and I like how Romans 8 puts it. It doesn't say good and bad things, or good things or bad things. It says all things are working together. So everything is working together for what? For your good. But there's also something else: to them that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. So all things are working. The falling and the failing, they're working together for your good. And sometimes, if we always win, if we are always growing, if we are always making it out there, then it means we'll never learn from failure. There are lessons that we get from failure that we'll never get anywhere else. There are lessons that we get from falling that we'll never get anywhere else. And sometimes when we always succeed, we will eventually get into spaces that we are not supposed to get into. We will get into spaces where God does not want us to be in, because some doors must be closed, and some doors must be closed harshly on our faces. And because of that, we must fall. We must fail. And in falling and failing, we will move forward. because without it, without it, we are not human. There's a movie that I enjoyed watching. In that movie, it's the backstory is around Greece, and the culture then was mostly based on the times of war. And so there they believed in gods. And so at this temple, one person, so this lady who was a believer in the temple and in the gods kind of said, you know what, I am a believer in the gods. And this warrior then says to her, the gods are jealous for us. How are they jealous? They are jealous because we have life. At any point in time, our life can end. And because we know that our life can end at any point in time, it allows us to live in the moment. It allows us to live and be excited about life because we know that this thing is not finite, it's not infinite, but it's finite. And so the gods are jealous. And that made me think, it really made me think that what makes life worth living is not just the successes, it's not the wins, or it's not just the wins, it's not just the prosperity, it's not just the growth, and it's not just those moments when we are happy, but it is also the moments where we fall, the moments where we fail, the moments where we experience pain, the moments where we experience hardship, because those moments enable us to also enjoy these. Some people look forward to the day where they die because what am I going to say? Would it have been worth it? Some people look forward to those moments. Some people look forward to rising again. Some people look forward to getting up and going back to God and saying, Lord, I thank you for saving me from this situation. Because had I succeeded and went through that door, look at what would have happened now. Short testimony. The Holy Spirit just reminded me. So I'm a person who loves to come up with ideas and kind of stuff. And so at one point I was coming up with certain ideas. And there was this gentleman that I was engaging with. And he was then saying, look, there's someone that I'd like to introduce you to, because I believe that this idea that you have, they can be able to assist us in getting it in motion and making it work. And lo and behold, the person they wanted to introduce me to faced a particular adversity or a particular exposure that was public in such a manner that he could no longer introduce me to that person, and that person was removed from their role. So they were saying, they then came back and said, Ish, the person that I wanted to introduce you to was removed from that position. And so that meant that door could never open again. What that would mean is, that would have meant was, had he introduced me to that person, I would have been also connected to that person. And whatever scandals linked to that person and whatever stains and the splatter that would have come out from that turmoil, it would have also come back to me. And then I realized the grace of God in closing doors that I wanted to push through. And so I've learned, do what I need to do and let God do what he does. Apostle Paul says, I planted, I watered, but God gave increase. So you can plant, you can water, but you can never guarantee the increase. And sometimes you plant, you water diligently, and you even turn the soil every now and then, and you are faithful in doing that. And God still does not give the increase. And then he says, because I know you, right? Because I know you, I want you to be dependent on me. Because if you get this, it'll corrupt you inside. And when you are corrupted, you will drift far from me. And I want you to have this mind in your mind. If God is in this position and you are with God here, if anything you do that is unrighteous, that is sinful, and you get to condemn yourself, God does not move, right? He is there in that position. But what happens is, because of self-condemnation, because of the voice of the enemy, you start to drift. You start to drift. And if you don't realize that God has designed certain things, you're falling and you're failing, to bring you closer and make you realize that you need Him more. And the more you fail, the more you fall, and the more you hang on to Him, the more you're in fellowship with Him. But if you allow anything else to pull you away from it, sin and the enemy seeks to pull you away. The condemnation, the reminder of the enemy seems to pull you away. It seems to say, go, go, you cannot be in His presence. And that's why you must fight it. That's why even in your falling, you come closer to God. Even in your falling, you press even harder and you say, I will not be moved. Neither death, nor life, nor powers, nor principalities, nothing on this earth or above or beneath will move me from the love of God. And so I am staying. So whether you fall or you rise or whatever happens, or you get hurt or you are labeled, whatever, you're reminded of your past, do not allow it to pull you away from Him. Stay, because He will never say, because you have sinned, I have pulled away and I have pulled away. It is because of the things that we do and the judgment and the voices that we listen to that pull us away from Him, that pull us away. And so we must always be fighting to be closer to Him and never be moved. And I want you to keep that in mind. I want you to hold on to that whether you fall or you fail, God remains in His position. What happens is you must always draw closer to Him and don't allow your falling and your failure to draw you away from Him. Once you understand that, your life and your journey with God begins to change. It begins to be something else. Once you understand that, then you understand what Christ did on the cross. Then you understand God's response to Paul after he prayed 3 times that this thorn on his flesh will not be removed. And God said, no. Clearly, no, I am not going to do it. You are going to hold on to that thorn on the flesh, because my grace is sufficient for you, because my strength is made perfect in your weakness, not in mine, but in yours. So, as I close, I want to remind you, do not allow the voice of the enemy to pull you away from God. Falling and failing are part of life. They are there to keep us humble, to keep us alive, to remind us of who we are. So friends, I hope you've enjoyed or you've taken something away from this. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and share the video to help the channel grow. You know, since we've started, the channel has done very well. So Let's keep it going. Until next time, remember, it's a monologue and video, but on the comment section, it's a dialogue.